Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are all the witnesses aware of the fact that when Justice Roberts declined the invitation of Chairman Durbin, that his letter was signed by the entire court? Are all of you aware of that? Mr. Fogel, do you think that was a wise decision?
Thank you, Senator. I think I said in my statement that I respect it. I think it was sincere. I think the problem, and I think it's significant, and I will grant that it was signed by all 9 of the justices. That's
my point.
Yeah, but
I just want people to understand that the court as a whole has a
Right.
problem with this, whether they're right or wrong. I don't, that's, I guess.
I'm sorry, Senator. I just wanted to say
Sure.
one other thing, if it's all right.
Sure.
I think it's significant that they all signed it. I think it doesn't suggest that that's all that all of them would do. It's a point about which they all reached consensus.
I sort of,
Yeah.
like you and Mr. Payne mentioned something sort of struck a nerve
Yeah.
with me. I'm not into micromanaging the court, Judge McCasey, but when you look at what other branches do versus the court, Mr. Payne, you say it's pretty obvious they have a sort of a lower threshold, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So what I would urge the court to do is take this moment to instill more public confidence. I'm not going to vote for any of these bills, but I think we'd all be better off if they did that. And here's what I want to kind of explain to people. In 1998, Justice Ginsburg donated a signed copy of her decision in VMI case where you had to admit women to a state school. And it was auctioned off at a fundraiser supporting the National Organization of Women's Legal Defense Fund. Now, I didn't know that until this moment. Do you all agree that if Judge Alito signed the Dobbs decision and gave it to the Susan B. Anthony pro-life organization to raise money, all hell would break loose in this country? Do you agree with that, Ms. Forrest?
So would I agree that if there was a sale of a
If
opinion as
Judge
a fundraiser?
Alito signed the Dobbs decision, autographs it, gave it to the SBA group to raise money, it'd be all hell would break loose.
Oh, yes, and I certainly would agree that would be a problem. And in fact, I think that's one of the reasons that Congress needs to play an active role today.
Why didn't all hell break loose in 1998?
I'm not sure what the reaction was.
Well, when Justice Ginsburg
Yeah.
signed a copy of the VMI decision for the National Organization of Women's Legal Defense Fund. Well, I think we all know the answer to that. Justice Ginsburg, one of the greatest people to serve on the court, received an award from the National Democratic Women's Club. Can you imagine what would happen if Justice Roberts received an award from a Republican women's club? I think we may read more about it. Justice Ginsburg was given a $1 million award by the Berggruen Institute, and it's this annual Philosophy and Culture Award for major achievements in advancing ideas that shape the world. Now, she didn't get the money personally, but they gave her $1 million to give to other people. Does anybody have a problem with that? Does everybody have a problem with that? Well, I'm going to assume silence means yes. The point we're trying to make here, I think, is that this effort to come after Justice Thomas is, I think, organized by the left. I think this moment where we could find common ground is being hijacked. I take Senator Durbin at his word. He's been concerned about this for a very, very long time. But the point is, the game has been played differently, and now we're in a moment where this court is under siege in multiple ways. And that is the problem I think most of us have. What are the lines to be drawn, and who's the referee? Does anybody know anything about the organization Demand Justice? Negative response for all members. Do you know where their money comes from? Negative response by all members. Are you aware that they spent over $1 million in ads pressuring Justice Breyer to resign. Nobody knew that, right? So if you're worried about dark money, I think that's a legitimate thing to be worried about. Let's worry about it across the board. And I guess my point, Mr. Chairman, is that the efforts by Senator Schumer to go to the court and threaten the court with its very existence, the efforts by people to intimidate justices, decide cases before the court, can't be ignored. And here's what I worry about the most. This is not about trying to upgrade the ability of the court to be more transparent. It's about an effort to destroy the legitimacy of this conservative court. So to the panel, if you have any ideas or recommendations about how the court could be more transparent, count me in. That makes perfect sense to me. But when you look at the history of the way things have happened with the court, when a liberal justice does something, the reaction in the American media is completely different. The New York Times article about George Mason admitted a lot of other schools who did the exact same thing. And I would say to Justice Alito, don't sign a copy of the Dobbs decision and give it to the SBA to raise money. You would not receive the same treatment if you did what Justice Ginsburg did.